Iran Daily Briefing, Saturday, April 11, 2026. High-level delegations from the United States and Iran are on the ground in Islamabad this morning. Vice President JD Vance leads the American team. Iran's foreign minister and parliament speaker lead theirs. Pakistan's prime minister has called these talks make or break. The ceasefire is 3 days old, the Strait of Hormuz is still restricted, and one delegation arrived carrying photographs of children. We'll come back to that. This is day 43 of the US-Iran conflict. A 2-week ceasefire took hold on April 8th. But, as we've covered this week, a ceasefire is not a peace agreement, and this one has not produced a full halt to hostilities. Here is where things stand this morning. The Strait of Hormuz remains restricted. NPR reports Kuwait was struck by drones on Friday. No source of the attack, casualty figures, or scale have been independently confirmed. And the two sides hold incompatible positions on whether Lebanon is included in any eventual agreement. The United States and Israel say it is not. Iran and Pakistan say it is. Into that environment, 2 delegations landed in Islamabad overnight. Today's episode covers what we know about those talks, the specific disputes that will define them, and the concrete things to watch for in the next 48 hours. The delegations are among the most senior either government has committed to direct negotiations. Al-Monitor reports the US team is led by Vice President JD Vance and includes Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Al-Monitor also reports the team departed for Islamabad on Friday, April 10th. Middle East Eye and France 24 confirm the team is on the ground. The Iranian side is equally senior. Middle East Eye reports that Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf were received at Nurkan Air Base by Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar and Army Chief Syed Asim Munir. Al-Monitor reports Ghalibaf arrived overnight and embraced Pakistan's army chief upon landing. Al Jazeera reports these are the highest-level direct talks between the United States and Iran since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, according to Al Jazeera and Middle East Eye, described them as make or break. Before either delegation sat down, both sides stated their positions publicly, and those positions conflict. France 24 reports Iran said it would only enter ceasefire talks if Washington accepted its preconditions. Chief among them, Iran demands Lebanon be included in any agreement. France 24 reports the United States and Israel have stated the ceasefire does not cover Lebanon. France 24 also reports Iran and mediator Pakistan have insisted it does. That gap is not a procedural dispute. It is a foundational one. If Lebanon's inclusion cannot be resolved, the structure of any permanent agreement is in question before the first session concludes. On the US side, Vice President Vance set the tone before departing. France 24 reports he warned Tehran not to play the United States ahead of negotiations. That warning carries weight in context. France 24 reports Trump warned Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz by Easter Sunday, which is tomorrow. Al Jazeera reports Trump also stated he would not accept Iran imposing tolls on shipping through the strait. And Trump threatened Iran with, in his words, the end of its civilization if it did not respond to his ultimatum. A statement Middle East Eye reports was first issued on April 7th, the day before the ceasefire took hold. The strait remains the sharpest pressure point. NPR reports Iran refused to reopen the strait on Friday. That is a single-source claim and has not been independently confirmed. As of April 10th, according to ibtimes.com.au, only 9 vessels transited the strait in the preceding 24 hours, despite the ceasefire being in place. The thing to watch, whether the Strait of Hormuz status changes before or during today's sessions. France 24's correspondent in Islamabad reported talks were set to begin within hours. If the strait remains restricted when those sessions open, it will be the first item on the table and the hardest. The Minab strike, what Iran brought to the table. Middle East Eye reports that Iran's delegation arrived in Islamabad carrying photographs and bags belonging to children killed in a US strike on the city of Minab on February the 28th. That image, diplomats arriving with physical evidence of civilian casualties, tells you something about how Tehran intends to frame these negotiations. Middle East Eye also reports that a preliminary US military investigation found outdated intelligence likely led to the strike hitting a school. According to Middle East Eye, that strike killed more than 165 children, a figure that has not been independently confirmed and which appears in Middle East Eye alone. If accurate, the scale of that event gives the Iranian delegation a specific, documented grievance to place on the table. Whether Washington addresses it directly in these sessions or treats it as a separate track is one of the things to watch as talks proceed. The Lebanon question. As noted in the top story, the inclusion of Lebanon in any ceasefire or peace framework is the single most explicit point of disagreement going into today's talks. France 24 reports the US and Israel say Lebanon is outside the scope of the current ceasefire. France 24 separately reports Iran demanded Lebanon's inclusion as a precondition for talks, and France 24 reports that Pakistan, the host and mediator, sides with Iran on this point. That puts the mediating country in an awkward position. Pakistan is not a neutral broker if it has already aligned with one side's precondition. Whether Pakistan's stance complicates the process or ultimately provides leverage to bridge the gap is something today's sessions should begin to clarify. The thing to watch: any statement from the Pakistani Foreign Ministry or either delegation on whether Lebanon's status has been set aside, tabled for a later track, or remains a blocking condition. The Strait of Hormuz, status and deadline. We have covered the Strait situation across several episodes this week. Today, the specific pressure point is this. France 24 reports, Trump warned Iran to open the Strait by Easter Sunday. That is tomorrow. NPR reports Iran refused to reopen the Strait on Friday. Again, a single-source claim that has not been independently confirmed. Al Jazeera reports Trump said the Strait would reopen soon as the delegations headed to Islamabad. Al Jazeera also reports he stated he would not accept Iran imposing tolls on transit. The iptimes.com.au figure of 9 vessels in 24 hours as of April 10th gives a concrete measure of how restricted traffic remains. A full reopening would register clearly in those transit numbers. The thing to watch: whether Iran makes any move on the Strait before or during today's sessions, and whether the US responds to any continued closure with escalatory language or action. Kuwait drone strike. NPR reports, Kuwait was struck by drones on Friday. That is the full extent of what is confirmed. One source, no attribution for the attack, no casualty figures, no scale. Nothing about this strike has been independently confirmed. It is worth noting because it occurred during an active ceasefire, and because Kuwait is not Iran, is not the direct conflict zone, and its involvement suggests the regional footprint of this conflict may be wider than the bilateral US-Iran frame. But given the sourcing, caution is warranted. We will report more if additional sources corroborate. Iran's delegation did not arrive in Islamabad with just negotiators and talking points. Middle East Eye reports they carried photographs and personal belongings of children killed in the February 28th strike on Minab. Children, Iran says, died when a US strike hit a school. A preliminary US military investigation, also reported by Middle East Eye, found that outdated intelligence likely caused the strike. The casualty figure, more than 165 children, comes from Middle East Eye alone and has not been independently confirmed. What makes this significant to today's talks is straightforward. Those materials were brought deliberately, and they were meant to be seen. Iran is entering negotiations with documented civilian losses as a visible part of its opening position. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth The title used by DoD News has described Operation Epic Fury as successfully dismantling one of the world's largest militaries. The two delegations enter these sessions with documented gaps and a specific warning on the Strait of Hormuz set for tomorrow. Several concrete developments are expected or possible in the next 24 to 48 hours. Today, April 11th. Talks in Islamabad are underway or imminent. France 24's correspondent on the ground reported sessions were expected to begin within hours of the delegation's landing. Watch for any readout from Pakistan's foreign ministry, which has been the primary channel for official statements from the host government. Tomorrow, April 12th, Easter Sunday. France 24. Reports Trump warned Iran the Strait of Hormuz must be open by Easter Sunday. That is the most specific near-term flashpoint. If the strait remains restricted on Easter Sunday, watch for a US response, either a formal statement, an escalatory action, or a signal that the warning will be extended in exchange for progress at the table. The Lebanon question. No resolution on this is expected quickly, but any signal from either side that Lebanon's status will be deferred rather than treated as a blocking precondition would be a meaningful shift. Watch for language from the Iranian Foreign Ministry or from Pakistan's mediation team. The Minab investigation. The preliminary US military finding on the February 28th strike is noted as preliminary. A fuller accounting could emerge during or after these talks. Watch for any official US comment on the investigation's status. Transit through the strait. The 9-vessel figure from April 10th is a baseline. Any significant change in that number in the next 24 hours will be a direct indicator of whether the strait situation is moving. Today's briefing covered the opening of high-level US-Iran talks in Islamabad, led by Vice President Vance and Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi, against a backdrop of a restricted Strait of Hormuz, an unresolved dispute over Lebanon's inclusion, a drone strike on Kuwait, and Iran's delegation arriving with physical evidence of civilian casualties from the Minab strike. We'll be back tomorrow with the first reporting from inside those sessions and any movement on the strait. If you found today's briefing valuable, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes every morning.